What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I am your host, The Martian, also known as John, here to break down another UFC card going down this weekend. The UFC 304 pay-per-view going down in Manchester, England, with a 14-fight card. 2 title fights, the interim heavyweight championship between Blaydes and Aspinall, a rematch, and also the welterweight rematch between Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammed in the main event. Kind of funny that both of these title fights are fights that have happened before, but also we didn't really get to see them fully develop because of the eye poke in the main event and then the knee injury in Aspinall fight. So pretty similar circumstances around the rematch for both of these, and top to bottom is looking like a pretty good card. Obviously, you have a lot of UK fighters given some favorable matchmaking mostly, but also some tough fights for the hometown fighters as well. So it should be a good card, and I'm looking forward to it top to bottom. And last week was also a decent card, a pretty fun card, I would say overall. I would say a mix of good and bad last week, just like all weeks, but I think the good slightly outweighed the bad. The stuff I was wrong about were Pudilova, Loic Rajabov. The Belal fight had a bad prediction on that one. And the main event, I don't think I predicted too well. Kind of curved that one a little bit, but went the wrong way and picked the wrong winner in that one. But also had some good winners. Thomas Peterson, the Maverick fight, the Cody Gibson fight. I thought I broke them down well. The Emil fight going under. Bruno Silva moneyline came through with a big comeback. Kurt Hollebach moneyline came through. Steve Garcia fight, I think went fine, although no official bets there. So like I said, it wasn't a great week, but I don't think I disgraced myself and had some good winning wagers. I came out slightly ahead, very small winning night at the end of the night, and upset to see my man Belal go down with another loss, but had some trepidation around how his career would look later into his career, and I'm starting to think I was pretty accurate with some of that hesitation. So it's unfortunate to see my man Bill slowing down, but that's the fight game, folks. So we're going to get into this card this week. We got 14 fights. I want to get through them in relatively quick time, and I want to try to be a little more entertaining, easygoing with the podcast. Obviously, I'm trying to still give you guys good analysis, give out some good bets, but I also want to make it entertaining so it's not, a slog sitting through some of these fights. And what better fight to start off on a light note than the first fight of the card, Shauna Bannon taking on Elise Arledine. And the odds for this one have Bannon as the -175 favorite. Ardelean, I guess you would call her, plus 150 coming back, and Ardelean is apparently an OnlyFans fighter, very active OnlyFans profile for her, and people were kind of surprised that she got signed to the UFC. I saw a few people saying like, oh, this is disgraceful, how could they sign a woman like this? And then she's just like a slight underdog in this fight. Like it's a completely winnable fight for her. Bannon got into the UFC through the Contender Series, and she's really not any better. Or no, excuse me, she didn't. She fought in Invicta, but she's not really any better than Ardelean. And I very briefly skimmed through the tape on this fight. I really don't think that Bannon has any significant advantage over Ardelean to the point where she should be a favorite of this number. Maybe a slight favorite just because she's fought and beaten the better competition. But I really don't. I didn't see anything that oh, Bannon's going to sound the outstrike or sound the outgrappler. Who the fuck knows? I wouldn't bet on Bannon, and it's probably a good fight to just pass overall. I have no legitimate betting opinion there, but I guess I'll pick Shauna to win the fight, but no confidence or betting angle on that one. And be a little wary of anybody planting their flag on that fight this week. If anyone's oh, confident bet on this one, bro, come on. It's the first fight between two shitty women fighters with minimal experience. How could you be confident in that one? We're moving on. Heavyweight division, Mick Parkin taking on Bukauskas-Prachnio. Odds for this one have Parkin Minus 340, Brzeski plus 280. A lot of action coming in on Parkin. I think he's a kind of a popular parlay piece this week. And where this line is at is definitely out of hand. But it also, I do think that Parkin is going to win the fight. And Brzeski, he's just a very stationary, boxer. He's very heavy on his legs. I think the calf kick of Parkin could be a problem. And Parkin just tends to have good work rate, good cardio throughout his fights. He can even mix in a takedown at times, where Brzeski is just purely an offensive striker. So Brzeski really needs the fight to go one way. Parkin can win the fight with his boxing, with his leg kick, with the takedown, with his cardio. He does have a lot more ways to win the fight. So Brzeski money line, tempting, but I will be passing on it because I just think it's an inevitable loser here. And I like Parkin round 2, round 3, plus 850 for 2, plus 1100 for 3. We know Brzeski slows down. And if Parkin is really a 75% favorite here, I think he's going to probably run away with the second and third rounds. So I'd rather take a smaller stab on the 2-3 props than maybe take any form of Parkin here. So I like those bets as my first, long shot prop stab for the card. And we're going to move on to the welterweight division. Sam Patterson taking on Kiefer-Crosbie. Odds for this one have Patterson as the big favorite, minus 425. Crosbie coming back plus 325. Another fight I see similar to the last one, where sure, Patterson is probably too juiced, but I can't really be enthused about Crosbie. Although I think Crosbie is the better dog, compared to Brzeski. For a 300 dog, I mean, Patterson, he hasn't fought anybody legit at welterweight, right? He moved up to welterweight after he got knocked out by Ashmouz, and he fought a bum Lionese. He made quick work of him there, but he's fought nobody at welterweight. So who really knows if this guy is a legit welterweight? And Kiefer-Crosbie at least is going to go for it, right? And in his UFC debut, he took a two Giuseppe early on, had some striking success, but then quickly ran out of steam and was finished later on in that first round. But I believe that was a very short notice fight, and Crosbie, like I said, he's at least going to go for it in round 1. So maybe some stabs on Crosbie round 1, but you also got to think that Crosby's probably going to correct himself a little bit, considering he gassed out so badly in his last fight so quickly. He's probably going to measure himself out a little bit more. And I don't know, it's tough to find a betting angle on this one. Maybe Crosbie knockout round 1, or maybe I wouldn't knock anybody playing Patterson to finish in the second or third round. But this fight is just so juiced to end inside the distance, man. Minus 600 to end inside the distance. I mean, is it really that? I really don't buy into this fight being that likely to finish inside the distance. So I really have no definitive betting angle, but the 3 I just mentioned were Crosbie early, Patterson late, or maybe even playing the overs here. Over 1.5 goes the distance at huge plus money. Tough to find an angle on that one, though. But fading Patterson ITD minus 225, that seems like a decent angle to me, because that just is way too juiced. Anyway, we're moving on. That's not an intriguing fight. We're moving on to the first really good fight on the card, which is somehow on the prelims here. This fight got demoted a few times this week. We got flyweight division, Muhammed Mokaev taking on Manel-Kape. Odds for this one have Mokaev as the favorite, getting a lot of steam, minus 157. Kape coming back plus 137. I mean, this fight is without a doubt the flyweight title contender fight, right? Whoever wins this fight is fighting for the title next, and it's on the early prelims of this pay-per-view. I mean, I think it's because Mokaev is such a boring fighter that they don't want to risk putting this too high up on the card in case he has like a wrestling clinic here where it's just a boring fight. I mean, pretty much all of his fights in the UFC have been boring. So I don't knock them for doing that here. I mean, he had that one finish early on over Cody Durden, but literally his last 5 fights were just total snoozers. A lot of competitive grappling, closer fights than they should have been, man. This guy lost rounds to Gordon and Philo and Tim Elliott and Perez as well, but Perez is a legit fighter. I just thought he looked really terrible in that fight, Mokaev did. He claimed to have some sort of illness of some sort, but just a really bad look. And I'm going with Manel-Kape here. I liked Manel months ago when he was the favorite, but I saw the line coming in. and I didn't pull the trigger on him, and man, boy, am I glad I did. I mean, I thought he was the justified favorite. Now he's plus 137, so I'm gonna be on Kape here for a decent sized bet, and I just think that Kape is a little too explosive and athletic for Mokaev to hold him down. I've never been super impressed with Mokaev's grappling. He's tenacious. He goes after the takedowns the entire time. He'll shoot 10, 15, 20 takedowns if he needs to, but I just don't think this guy's grappling game is anything impressive, and especially at 125, these guys are very athletic. They're hard to hold down. They're great at scrambling, and I think Kape is going to be tough to hold down, and he's going to be the one landing all the damage. Mokaev's striking sucks. He doesn't land ground and pound on the floor, and Mokaev just does no damage. So if he wants to win this fight, he's going to need a control-heavy grappling effort where possibly he subs, but his submission game has looked underwhelming in his UFC career as well. He subbed a few guys very, very late in the third round, but he's also just looked underwhelming in a lot of grappling. So I think Manel is, going to struggle at times. He's going to be put on bottom, but I think he'll escape. He'll land some good damage here. He'll win these rounds, and I think he has, 90% of the damage upside in this fight, and I think he's the much more just vicious fighter in there, man. I think Kape is going to win this one, and I like him. I love him at the plus money. I'm going to be on him for at least 1.5 units, and I believe the crotch sniffing Mokaev will lose that undefeated record in this one, hopefully. Who won? I mean, we all know that Pantoja would absolutely toy with Mokaev, right? So let's get we want to see the Pantoja-Kape rematch. The first fight was close. I think it was Kape's debut or something. Maybe the Nicolau fight was his debut, but it was a close fight, and I think we all want to see that one again. So Kape is the more exciting fighter, and I hope he wins this one. Next fight's in the welterweight division. We got Oban Elliott taking on Preston Parsons, minus 135 for Parsons, plus 115 for Oban Elliott. Love the PP in this fight. I'm going with the American Preston Parsons. I just think he's the better, more polished, proven overall fighter in both in all realms of the fight. I just think they're both kind of generalists, right? They both have okay striking, they both have okay grappling. I just think Parsons is a little bit better at both of them, and I think, as I mentioned, he's a better striker, grappler, wrestler, in my opinion, all of those things, and he's beaten the better guys. Oban Elliott, I thought, was really unimpressive in the Val Woodburn fight. I mean, just a total bum role player fighter, and Oban still struggled to finish him there. Had some, sloppy, gassy moments. I think he slowed down in that fight a good margin. So I just like Parsons very easily here. So this line confuses me. I've already taken some minus 140, and I'm prepared to add a good bit more. I mean, I think this is probably my most confident money line on the card. I'm looking to go about 2 units on the PP American here, and defeat the Welshman here on the prelims. I like that one a lot. We're moving on to the light heavyweight division. Modestas Bukauskas taking on Martian-Prachnio. Odds for this one have Bukauskas as the minus 146 favorite. Prachnio coming back at plus 126. A little bit of a European showdown here. And I like this fight to go the distance because it's minus 140. I took that 1.4 units. And little less than 60% to go the distance in this one. But I mean, we all know how Martian-Prachnio fights. He is a decision fighter. He kicks the legs, he pokes with his punches, he doesn't push a pace, he doesn't really come forward. He is completely content to just land, pitter-patter strikes at you. And we've seen him, William Knight in that one fight. He didn't even fight. He showed up. It was one of the most confusing fights ever from a fighter. He completely just phoned it in the entire fight, and Martian never heard him, never pushed a pace, never really tried to get him out of there. So I think the finish equity is very heavily on the side of Bukauskas here. But even himself, he's not a very punishing hitter. He doesn't really push a high pace himself. We've seen him go the full 15 minutes several times in the UFC, not really landing a whole lot of strikes. The McCall fight, the Pauga fight, the Pedro fight. I mean, even Pedro slowed down big time in those second and third rounds. Did we see Bukauskas looking to sit down on his shots and get him out of there? No, not at all. And even in the Cage Warriors, he was taking some guys to the decision late into the fourth round of the fight, and I just don't think either of these guys are aggressive and powerful strikers. And I think when they match up, it's going to be a bit of a sparring fight, and I like the fight to go the distance at under 60%. I cap that closer to 65% here. So anything under minus 200 I like for the goes the distance here. And what is Bukauskas no scorecards? Because as I mentioned, I think he has just about all the finish equity. Minus 150 for Bukauskas scorecards. That is also good, man. I mean, given Prachnio 4 out of 10 finishes here, that's wrong. I think it should be 7 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10 for Bukauskas. So I might even add that that's kind of like a hedge for the goes the distance, right? Well, it'll be a double loser if Prachnio finishes him, but I really don't see that happening. So those are two bets I like for that fight. Shouldn't be a very exciting one, though. We're moving on to the bantamweight division. Loughran taking on Jake Hadley. Odds to this one have Loughran as the favorite, sitting at minus 210. Coming back, Hadley plus 180. And we got Hadley moving up to 135 on short notice here. Think it's a bad move. Think he's losing the fight. I think Callan at minus 210 is a safe play here. I just think that Callan can probably win in any realm of the fight he wants. I think he can outstrike Hadley. He could take him down. Hadley is just he's a very predictable striker, man. He does that. He's a southpaw boxer, throws a lot of the same combinations, a lot of hooks. He keeps his elbows really high. I think a good body striker would really destroy him. And I just think I was fairly impressed by Loughran in his last fight. He wasn't fighting a good opponent, but I mean, he absolutely beat the shit out of Pacheco, and he was hunting for a finish there. He didn't get it, but I mean, he was going for the kill. He had him hurt. He was chopping the legs. He was throwing ground and pound on the floor. I mean, he looked aggressive. He looked like he had good cardio there, and I just think that Hadley's going to be undersized here. He's unprepared because it's short notice. And I really don't think he's the better grappler or striker here. So I think minus 210 is perfectly fine for Loughran. And might even finish him in the second or third. But I think moneyline is just a fine play there, minus 200. I think I would cap him closer to maybe minus 275, 300. Sounds more accurate. So I took some Loughran minus 205 there. And we're going to move on to the women's strawweight division. Molly McCann, Bannon-Ardelean. Odds for this one have McCann as a huge favorite, minus 335. Brazil coming back plus 275. So you got the hometown fighter in McCann here, but this is too much juice, man. The last time Molly McCann fought at home, she got armbarred by Stoliarenko in about 2 minutes. And we just know, if you guys know MMA, you know how one-dimensional and predictable of a fighter Stoliarenko is. And to get caught with that one trick of hers is such a detriment to you as a fighter that I don't see how anybody is going to be laying minus 300 or more here. And I think Brazil hasn't looked great in the UFC so far, but I think she's serviceable. She gave Lookbunmi a tough fight. Some people even scored that fight for her. Really not that crazy to give Brazil the second and third round in that fight. She finished the legend Mara McMahon, who we know is a tough old broad, and Brazil was able to get her out of there with that nasty head kick. Defeated the legend Shauna Bannon, who we're going to see earlier on this card. So I don't think Brazil is really atrocious, and they're kind of pricing her like she's just a total bum that McCann's going to run through. And I don't think that's the case. We also got to remember that McCann dropped down to 115 in her last fight against Belbita and got the W there, but we haven't seen her at 115 in a long time before that, right? I think it was we have to go way back. I'm still looking. It's still flyweight. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we've ever seen her at strawweight outside of round 1, right? She's probably in much better shape because she's cutting the weight here, but still, she hasn't actually fought out of round 1 as a strawweight. So you got to wonder how her cardio is going to hold up with that weight cut. Probably a little bit tougher of a weight cut for her. So, yeah, there's just too much uncertainty, and I would never, ever lay McCann minus 3 something. So I wouldn't knock a small stab on Brazil. It's going to be tough for her to win a decision in Molly's, hometown or home country. But I do think that the value is on Brazil in this one at plus 275. So wouldn't knock a play on her there. And we're moving on to the last prelim on the card, the 9th and final prelim. Nathaniel Wood taking on Daniel Pineda. Odds for this one have Wood as a huge favorite, minus 400. Pineda plus 300. And this is kind of a similar sentiment as some of the other underdogs on the card, where I do think that Pineda competes early and will look pretty live as a plus 300 dog, but will run out of steam like he very often does. I mean, Daniel Pineda has never won a fight by decision in 43 pro fights, which is just an absolutely remarkable statistic. It's absolutely insane that that has never happened, but he's fought to the decision 6 times. He's lost all 6 of those times, and 4 of them being in the UFC, and it's just the style of fighter he is. He's a very aggressive fighter, finish-heavy fighter, and he doesn't do well when the fights actually see the full 5 minutes and they go the full 3 rounds. And I do think that Nathaniel Wood is very likely to take over here. We know Wood can struggle early at times in fights, but work into them well. We saw that in his last one against Naimov. He even got dropped in the Feely fight, came back to win the 3rd round there. So I think the guy is pretty good at adapting as the fight goes. So I think Pineda will probably have a few moments of success early on here, but eventually Wood will work into the fight, figure things out, and probably take over in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. But Wood is not really a great finisher in my opinion, and Pineda, he's not really a quitter. For as much he's been finished 9 times. But I don't think he completely flat out quits in there, and I don't think he's going to give Wood an easy out here. So the fight to go over 1.5 rounds is -170. I think that's good. I think playing the fight to go long, maybe even the goes to distance at +160, Wood by decision +235, starts round 3, is around even money. I think those are the looks I would be looking to go with here. I haven't actually placed any wagers on them so far, but that's the angle I would look to play, with the best bet, I believe, being the over 1.5 rounds. And yeah, maybe, and of course look for Wood live. If Pineda has that early moment, he lands a big punch or has a submission attempt, I think the live line could sway in his favor, and then it would be a good time to jump in on Wood live to take over. So that's going to do it for the prelims. We breezed through 9 fights in about 18 minutes. Let's keep up that tempo. We're moving on to the main card, 5-fight main card, kicking things off in the featherweight division. Arnold Allen, Giga-Chikadze. Odds for this one have Allen -220, Chikadze +185. We should be looking at a striking affair here, a little bit different striking styles. You got the southpaw boxer in Arnold Allen, and then you have the switch hitter, but mostly southpaw, Giga-Chikadze, who is more of a kick-heavy fighter. And Giga didn't look too great in his last fight against Caceres, man. Very underwhelming performance there. And it's been a while since we've seen Giga impress. You know, the last fight he really impressed was the knockout over Barbosa, and that was already 3 years ago. And, you know, the guy's had a long career. He had a long kickboxing career. He's already 35. It's very possible that Giga is already possibly slowing down and past his prime. He also took the beating of a lifetime versus Calvin Kattar, absorbing the most elbows in MMA history in one fight. So I still think Arnold Allen is on the up and up, and I thought he got on the wrong end of a bad decision in his last fight against Movsar Evloev. I had him winning the 1st and 3rd rounds there, and a lot of people did as well. And you know, he could be 11-1 in the UFC if it weren't for that. And even Giga, man, he's 8-1 in the UFC. You know, this is a great matchup. This is a good time for them to match up. You know, they both, I think, sort of need a big win, and they can get it over one another. And I'll be going with Arnold Allen to do it because I like his offense a little bit more. I think he's a little bit more likely to control the range in this fight. So I think that if Giga wants to maintain that kicking range, he's going to have a tough time doing it because I don't see Arnold getting stuck outside at the kicking range. I think Arnold is going to work his way inside, pressure, and put Giga on the back foot, which could lead to eventually Giga slowing down a little bit. And I just go with the more conventional offense, which is, I believe, Arnold Allen here with his superior boxing of the two. And he's also, you know, hometown fighter here. I say hometown, I mean home country. Same shit. But you know, I think this one is going to decision. It's very, very juiced to go to the decision, -220. So if the rounds are close, I think it's probably going to sway in favor of the Brit Arnold Allen. So I will be going with Arnold to win the fight. Where the line is at, maybe slightly a little wide, maybe closer to -185 would be fine for Allen. But I can't get interested in Giga. Never really been a big Giga fan. Don't think I bet on him many times. And I do think it'll be an Arnold Allen decision here. Also, you know, we could even see Arnold working a takedown. He doesn't really go for takedowns much, but we know Giga is not great at defending takedowns or getting off a bottom. So that is another path for Arnold that he might even look to throw in there. But Arnold has hit not many takedowns in his career, but I think that could be an underrated angle of this fight. You could like Giga and say, oh, I love Giga plus 185, and then one takedown later, you're like, oh shit, he's plus 500 live after losing a round on bottom. So I think the price is just about right. No interest in a bet there for me. Better spots on the card. We're moving on to the Premier Division, the one and only fight in the Premier Division on the card, and it's a banger, fellas. Christian Leroy Duncan taking on Gregory Rodrigues. Odds for this one have CLD favored minus 135, with the Brazilian Kape coming back at plus 115. Interesting line to me. Very interesting line. I will be going with my boy Kape here. Now I like both these guys fairly. I wouldn't say equally. No, I definitely like Robo more, but I've done pretty well betting Duncan fights in the past few fights. I bet him to win my round 2 knockout in his last fight. I had Armen Petrosyan over him, and in this fight, so if it stays standing, it's going to be very competitive, right? Both guys are skilled strikers. Kape has solid, powerful boxing, hard leg kicks as well, and he's just an overall solid striker. He does have a little bit of a questionable chin. We have seen him dropped and knocked out on several occasions, but I don't think CLD is like a big puncher per se. He does mix in his strikes really well, but I don't think that he is a massive hitter. And we saw that a bit in the Dennis Tululan fight, where he was just teeing off on him for the majority of that fight, and he eventually broke him down and finished him, but I mean, he must have landed 100 strikes on Tululan before Tululan went down. And Tululan is a tough son of a bitch in his own right, but, I don't think he really showed any, impressive power in that fight. So I don't think the possibility of Rodrigues getting chinned here is super high. And then you got to wonder who has the more grappling upside. We've seen Duncan implement some grappling in his recent fights, but make no mistake, guys, Kape is the better grappler. Kape, better wrestler, better grappler, better jiu-jitsu credentials. And if you go back and watch Duncan's fights from Cage Warriors, we saw some questionable things when he was put on bottom. When he was pushed against the cage, he got stuck there. When he got put on bottom, he got stuck there. So I feel like this is always the constant narrative of Rodrigues fights are like, oh, he should win the striking, but if he used his grappling, he would really win. And that's the case again. I think he has a chance. Excuse me for the motorcycles, but he has a chance to win the fight if it's on the feet. However, he has a really, really good chance to win the fight if he mixes in some takedowns, which let's hope he does here. And at plus money, I like Kape, man. I really think one takedown could be like a submission for Kape if he does it, and let's hope he does. And I think he's gonna get it, man, because Christian likes to mix in the clinch. I don't know if he comes from a Muay Thai background, but we see him throw a lot of knees and elbows in the fights, and we know Kape can engage in the clinch, and then he has some nice judo takedowns he hits there. And I mean, Kape's coming off of one of his best victories, Brad Tavares. Brad is. He has, I believe he has the record for the most fights in UFC middleweight division, and he's tied for the record for most wins in the UFC middleweight division with 15 wins, 24 fights overall. And Kape beat him both rounds and knocked him out in the third. I mean, that's a legit win. The legend Junyun Park, Kape knocked him out. Petrosyan, who had a common opponent. Kape was a close decision there. A lot of people thought he got robbed in that decision. So I just think there's a lot of good things to point to for Kape here. I mean, if the Petrosyan decision goes his way, which it should have by most people's accounts, he could be 7-1 in the UFC. So Kape to me is the clear side in this one. I like him at the plus money price. I'm going to be on him for at least a unit, possibly a little bit more. And I don't think there's any reason to go for the sub prop, right? The sub prop is a very commonly bet prop in his fights. It's 550, which is it's enticing enough to make you think. But time and time again, people have bet the Kape sub prop, and it's not come to fruition. The Tululan fight seemed like an obvious one. I bet it plus 2 something there. He takes him down instantly. You're thinking, oh, it's great, he's gonna get it, and then he goes for ground and pound and knocks him out instead. So I think Rodrigues is like reluctant to use the submissions for some reason. So stick with the money line. I like it for 1 to 1.5 units, and that is going to be it for that one. We're moving on to the featured fight on the pay-per-view. We have Bobby Green taking on Patty-Pimblett in the lightweight division. A fun matchup here where we have Bobby Green slight favorite -119 to Patty coming back -104. Near pick'em odds. It was pick'em at one point, and I might even go back to it. Something to consider, guys, on this card is pay-per-view cards, the favorites get bet. England cards, the British fighters get bet. And you combine the two of them, so if you like an underdog who is a British fighter, it might be best to wait. Like Hobo-Cop, like for instance, we might see CLD action pour in, and we might get -150 CLD, and you can get a great price on Robocop. So consider that. That's always something to note here. And Patty, being such a popular fighter, is another case of that. I think we could see in the next 48 hours before the fight, we could see some Patty action surge back and get possibly plus money on Bobby King Green, the first fight known as King Green after he legally changed his name. And, I'm going with Bobby here at a near pick'em price. I just think his potential to run away with the fight is a lot better than Patty-Pimblett. That's something I often consider at pick'em, is if these guys are winning the fight, who has a better chance to clearly win? And I believe that is Bobby Green. And it's because when the fight's on the feet, I think Bobby should be the much better striker, man. I mean, we saw in the last fight against Jim Miller, an old legend, still a solid fighter, even though he's far past his prime. Jim had a big moment where he stunned Bobby in the first round. But then in the second and third round, Bobby's cardio and his output and his aggression was remarkable. I mean, he landed an absurd amount of strikes, 61 strikes in the second, 82 strikes in the third round. That might be one of the most significant strikes ever landed in a round when it was all on the feet. And he just busted Jim up. There's some great pictures out there of the blood spewing out. But even in that first round where he lost it because he got dropped, he landed 43 strikes. So when this fight is on the feet, I just think Bobby Green's hand speed and his striking output is so much better than Patty-Pimblett's, and the striking really favors Bobby Green here. The way the Patty could win the fight is probably with his grappling, but I've never rated Patty's grappling super high, and I've always rated Bobby's takedown defense pretty well. And we've seen it deplete a little in some of his recent fights because, obviously he's getting older, but I still think, he has great, fundamental takedown defense, and he understands how to dig underhooks and, navigate the clinch and how to get back off his feet if he does get taken down. And it's not like Patty-Pimblett's, wrestling is really any good, And Jordan Levitt took him down several times. Jared Gordon took him down several times. Bobby might even want to mix in a takedown if he I don't think he will, but he could if he really wanted to. So I just trust Bobby to avoid the grappling here, and I favor him by a good margin on the feet with his output, his speed. Even though he's, I think, 8 years older than Patty-Pimblett, I still think he's going to be quicker on the feet. He's going to be a lot quicker to the punch, and I'm going with Bobby Green to outbox and to keep the fight standing for his way to a decision. I think it probably this is a fight where I'm not super worried about the judging being in favor of Patty, because if the fight is going how I think it is, I think that Bobby's just going to be landing a ton more strikes. And Patty's a tough son of a bitch, though. I don't think he's going to get him out of there, so I think it will be a Bobby Green decision here. The fight going the distance is very, very generously priced, I think, at -135. I think that's another good angle in this fight, is possibly playing the fight to end inside the distance. They have Bobby Green at +140 in the no scorecard market here, which I also think is wrong, but yeah, it's a pick'em fight. I believe it's the closest line fight on the card. Great fight to pick a side on. I think it's a great fight to pick a side, plant your flag, and ask yourself: is Bobby Green? Did he really look impressive enough, losing to Jared Gordon and getting the luckiest decision ever, and beating the corpse of Tony Ferguson? Did that guy look like a guy who's going to beat Bobby Green? My opinion, no. My opinion, the answer is no. The guys who've beaten Bobby Green lately, I think, are a tier above Patty-Pimblett. So I'm going Bob Green there. I like that one, again, for a decent-sized bet, 1.5 to 2 units. And I like a lot of money lines on this card. We're moving on. Co-main event, interim heavyweight division, interim heavyweight title, -408 for Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blaydes coming back plus 308. Sorry for having a fucking stroke in the middle of introducing that fight, but we got through it. So this first fight lasted 16 seconds, right? Threw a few leg kicks. Tom's knee gave out. Oh, it was 15 seconds, excuse me. And didn't really learn a whole lot. The fight closed Tom as the minus 140 favorite, coming back with Curtis Blaydes plus 120. And now the line has changed from around 59% to over 80% for Tom Aspinall, which I think is wrong. I think Tom Aspinall has proven that he is better than I originally thought, for sure. The fight that really woke me up to that was the Alexander Volkov fight, and that fight continues to age well because Volkov, he's an old boy, but he's still fighting magnificently. He's won several fights in a row in convincing fashion. And the way that Tom Aspinall took him down and just easily submitted him there was remarkable. Volkov is since losing that fight 4-0, 3 finishes. He was a big 200 dog to Pavlovich and just destroyed him that entire fight. A unanimous 30-27 decision. So, Volkov, it's not like heavyweight's a good division. Rosenstrike, Romanov, Tuivasa, Pavlovich. Volkov really hasn't lost like a minute of fighting since he lost to Aspinall. So that win is aging really well. But after the Blaydes fight, he came back from injury. He knocked out Tabura in 70 seconds. He knocked out Pavlovich in 70 seconds. So we have 2 1-minute fights, and I just don't know how you can get to 80% for Tom Aspinall, considering that, okay? Tom Aspinall has been out of round 1 3 times in his career, and he's 1-2 in those fights. One was a DQ. The one he got heel hooked in really pathetic fashion. That was almost 10 years ago. And then the other time was versus Andrei Arlovsky, who we all know is, ancient, 40-something years old, and he took him down, and then Andre just instantly gave up a choke there. He didn't even have the hooks in, and he just tapped. So you got to have some serious questions about how is Tom Aspinall's cardio going to look. We've never seen him tested outside of the first round in the UFC, and he's only been outside of round 1 once in the past 8 years, while Curtis Blaydes has been to the full 5 rounds a few times. The Volkov fight was a good performance where he just took him down for 5 rounds the entire time. The Rosenstrike fight was only 3 rounds, but very economical and safe performance there. So I think the fight going longer favors Curtis Blaydes because the uncertainty around the cardio, the experience that Curtis has going into fights, the fact that he's actually the only fighter who's been 5 rounds of the 2. And if it comes down to these guys being a little bit tired, who do you think is more likely to end up on top? And I believe that is Curtis Blaydes. So make no mistake, Tom Aspinall is going to be dangerous early on here. He's much quicker. Curtis Blaydes is not really a great striker. We saw him versus Pavlovich just fight really poorly there, man. He gave Pavlovich the exact range he wanted. He was getting hurt with jabs. He was getting stunned with punches. His chin did not look good. And then did we see him look to shoot a takedown? Not really. He didn't. He just fought horribly in that fight. So I understand having some pause about Blaydes here because it is likely that he's going to be at a huge speed disadvantage and might even get knocked out in the first round here, but it's still heavyweight, and Curtis can also land a big punch here. Curtis can land an early takedown. I think Curtis Blaydes plus 300 is a good enough bet that I will be taking some of that before the fight. Maybe a half unit, 3/4 of a unit. I wouldn't even knock a 1 unit play on Curtis Blaydes. And if he gets knocked out in the first round, so be it. That does seem like a big portion of Tom Aspinall's win condition. But I'm not waiting for a live bet here because, as I mentioned, guys, it's heavyweight. Curtis can land a big punch. Curtis can land a takedown. Remember the first fight, man? Fucking freak injuries happen. Weird shit happens in fights, and I just don't think Tom Aspinall being 80% here makes a whole lot of sense. So another thing is Tom Aspinall, I mentioned how great his grappling looked versus Volkov. We know that that's not really a path here because Curtis Blaydes is hard to take down. He's hard to get good positions on. We saw Almeida take him down. We get him against the fence, put him in positions, but Curtis was never in trouble. Curtis defended really well. He was completely calm there. And if Aspinall wants to take the fight to the floor, he's probably going to have minimal success, and he's probably just going to end up killing some of his gas tank. So, yeah, man, I mean, Tom could obviously knock him out very easily here in the first round, but I would be a bit surprised to see Tom win out of the first round. I would be, happily surprised to see him do it, and I hope we get a good fight. I hope it's not just a quick finish. I hope we get an interesting fight here, and we get to learn a little bit more about Tommy Aspinall here. So, we're moving on to the main event, another rematch. I got to get a swig of water here. We have Belal Muhammad taking on Leon Edwards for the UFC Welterweight Championship. Technically a rematch because the first fight ended in a no contest. It was about, just a little over 5 minutes. The first round of that fight, we saw Leon outstrike Belal. Belal wasn't really taking, forward pressure in that fight. He was kind of taking the back foot, fighting a little scared. And we saw Leon just, show the superior striking. He even hurt him with a head kick at one point. Belal shot one takedown that was, pretty easily stuffed. And Leon Edwards' takedown defense, has just looked great lately, man. We saw him fight Usman the second fight, and he got taken down at times in that fight, but he's just a very, very aware fighter of where he is in the cage, and he has good footwork. He knows how to stuff takedowns. We saw him get put on bottom versus Covington a few times and instantly pop back up to his feet. He did, get stuck on bottom in the last minute of the 5th round, but I think that was him kind of just being like, I've got this decision in the bag, man. I know I won 3 or 4 rounds. He took me down. I'm not going to risk getting up and, giving up my back or something. I'm just going to lay on bottom for a minute or two and then win my fight 4 rounds to 1, which is exactly what happened. So I don't really put that too much stock into that one. So if this fight stays in the feed, I see no reason to think that Belal Muhammad has sustained success here. I mean, make no mistake about it, Leon Edwards is the better striker of the two. He has better footwork. He knows how to play into aggressive opponents. So if Belal takes the front foot and he's being aggressive, I think he's probably going to play right into Leon's, counter-striking game. And if you give Leon the front foot, he's not going to do a whole lot. He's not going to throw a massive amount of strikes, but he knows how to land good strikes and to win rounds and to stay safe. And if Belal wants to shoot takedowns, we saw Leon's takedown defense and get-ups look really solid against Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington, who are better wrestlers than Belal is. So I think it's a pretty narrow window for Belal to win the fight here. I think the first 2 rounds are going to be Leon's. While Leon is fresh, while his feet are still moving quickly, I see Belal having a tough time tracking Leon down and landing any good strikes for a long period of time or getting a takedown. And let's say Belal does get takedowns here. His takedown game is very control-oriented, The Wonderboy Thompson fight, the Luque fight where he got takedowns, he wasn't really doing a ton, and he landed some ground and pound on Wonderboy Thompson, but his grappling game is very control-oriented, and I don't think he's passing Leon's guard. Leon, when he gets a little bit of space, is really good at exploding up and escaping back to the feet, and I just don't see Belal having a lot of success. And his correlation to winning the fight, I think, is very, very late correlated. You know what I mean? I don't think he's winning this fight until it hits the 3rd round. So I think he's going down the first 2 rounds, and then he's going to have to absolutely hustle and work his ass off to win these 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. And he could do it. He could put up a pressure striking effort. He could shoot a shitload of takedowns and look to hit him. He does have very, very good cardio. He's been the 5 rounds a few times and grinded out some good wins. And the guy has just been steadily knocking off good fighters and really not really facing a whole lot of trouble. His past 5 fights since fighting Leon, the Maya, the Wonderboy, Luque, Brady, Burns, didn't really have a lot of trouble in many of those fights. The Gilbert Burns fight, Burns got injured pretty early on, so I don't put a whole lot of stock into that one. But yeah, a little bit of a layoff for Belal as well, 14-month layoff, and I just think that Leon's winning this fight early on. He's going to get out to an early lead, and I think he's going to win the first 2 rounds, and he's probably going to win one of the last 3. I think he's going to lose one of the 4th or 5th rounds, but I still think he's going to get away with either a 3-2 or 4-1 decision here. And it will go the full 15. I think this one's pretty likely, the full 25. I think this one's pretty likely to go the full 25 minutes. Is this right? Bet Online is showing minus 170 for the goes the distance. Now that doesn't seem right. Those odds were much different a few days ago. Let me see if that is in fact true. Goes the distance minus 170. That's a good bet, man. That's a good bet. And so is Leon moneyline, to be honest. Minus 250 for Leon moneyline is fine. I cap him closer to minus 350 here. And, I think that taking Leon moneyline is good. GTD is good. And then they have Leon no scorecards at minus 240 on FanDuel. I also think that is good. Best bet of the entire fight, I think, is Leon moneyline. And I'm kind of weighing out, in my opinion, if I'm going to take the goes the distance or if I'm going to take the Leon money line. And now I have something to think about now that the GTD line has come in a little bit. So I like Leon to win the fight by 49-46 decision in a not so entertaining fight. But I do think if anyone's finishing the fight, it's certainly going to be Leon Edwards. So hopefully something exciting happens for a change. And that is going to do it. That is going to do it. 14 fights going down in Manchester, England. It's going to be, they're happening in the middle of the night for the UK fans, those sorry sons of bitches. The first fight is kicking off at midnight for them, and the main event isn't going to start probably till 6 in the morning. It's going to be 7 in the morning with the sun coming up, and Leon Edwards and Belal are going to be fighting. Kind of a rough card, in my opinion. Some guy at the press conference said, "Is this the biggest card in UK history?" And Dana said yes in very hesitant fashion. That's a fucking lie. There's no way this is the biggest card in UK history. Bisping versus Henderson is probably the biggest card. But anyway, that's enough about this card. Going down top to bottom, I like Parkin round 2, round 3. I like Manel-Kape moneyline, Preston Parsons moneyline that goes the distance in the Bukauskas-Prachnio fight. Loughran moneyline. I like Rodrigues moneyline, Bobby Green moneyline, Small, Curtis Blaydes moneyline, and also Leon Edwards moneyline as well. The plays I'm on the fence about a little bit are maybe some form of Crosbie round 1. Or Crosbie just maybe money line, and also Bannon-Ardelean I think is an interesting dog. So good card, man. I think there's a lot of spots I like. As I mentioned, I'm pretty confident in Bobby Green, Kape, Loughran, the GTD, and the Bukauskas-Parsons and Kape. So and Leon Edwards. So I have a lot of spots I like that I'll be going over a unit on in this spot. So I like a lot of these fights from a betting perspective, and I think it should be a pretty good card overall. That's going to do it. Hope everyone enjoyed the podcast, got some good information. Hope you all enjoy the fights and win some bets this weekend. I'll see you all before the next UFC event next week. Peace out, everyone.